Every emotional reaction is a move on the battlefield. But most people never ask, who's making the move? You think you're feeling, but you're not. You're running a script. Old code. Emotional conditioning you didn't choose. Someone ignores you. You spiral. Someone criticizes you. You justify. Someone leaves. You chase. You don't decide to feel. You react by default. And here's the brutal truth. If they can trigger you, they can control you. Not because they're powerful, but because you never became the strategist of your own mind. This video is not about suppressing emotion. It's about out-strategizing it, stepping out of the loop, and learning to move like a general on your own psychological battlefield, because when you stop reacting, you start commanding. Part 1. Why your emotions are not yours. You feel anger, jealousy, rejection, shame, and you think, this is me, this is how I feel. But here's the problem. You never chose those reactions. They were chosen for you. Emotion as programming, not truth. What you call emotion is often a loop, a pre-written reaction tied to an invisible memory, a trigger reinforced over years by parents, trauma, culture, and social pressure. You didn't decide to fear abandonment. You were conditioned to. You didn't choose to crave attention. You were rewarded for it as a child. You didn't pick shame as a tool. It was handed to you and installed like software. And now, you mistake programming for personality. Why it feels real. Emotions feel true because they feel loud. But loud doesn't mean accurate. Loud doesn't mean conscious. It just means rehearsed. The more a trigger repeats, the more automatic it becomes. And the more automatic it becomes, the more you think it's you. But it's not. It's a subroutine, an echo, a learned reflex mislabeled as intuition. The real danger. You're not responding, you're repeating. You think you're being authentic, but you're really being predictable. They don't need to know you deeply. They just need to know what buttons to press. Say this. You defend. Pull away. You chase. Disagree. You escalate. And every time they push a button, you obey the programming, like a puppet wired to strings you forgot existed. The first step toward sovereignty. You can't control what you don't question, and you can't outmaneuver a system you don't even realize you're inside. The first shift is not resistance. It's awareness. When a feeling arises, don't ask, how do I fix this? Ask, where was this installed? Who benefits from this pattern? Whose voice is this, really? Because until you audit your emotions, you don't feel, you just obey. And a mind that obeys its triggers belongs to whoever knows how to pull them. Part 2. From emotional slave to mental strategist. You've spent your life reacting, triggered, pulled, unconscious. And the worst part? You thought that was you. But now you see the patterns. You recognize the loop. And that awareness creates the opening. To stop being a slave and start becoming a strategist. Strategic awareness begins with one shift. Stop asking, why do I feel this way? Start asking, who does this feeling serve? Because when you feel anger, guilt, shame, fear, someone, somewhere, benefits from your reaction. That's not paranoia, that's systems thinking. Emotional slavery is when your internal world is predictable. Strategic awareness begins the moment you break the loop. 3 levels of strategic transformation. Level 1, label the feeling like data. Stop saying, "I am angry." Start saying, "There is anger present." Why? Because when you label it, you separate from it. It's not who you are. It's just a signal. Level 2, trace the source. Every reaction has a root. Ask, where have I felt this before? What memory does this pattern belong to? Is this reaction mine or inherited? This breaks the illusion that you're reacting to now, because most reactions come from then. Level 3. Replace reaction with protocol. Emotion wants chaos. Strategy wants control. Instead of reacting, you pause. You scan. You select a response, not based on emotion, but on outcome. You become the general, and your mind becomes the battlefield. Think like a commander, not a victim. A victim says, "I feel attacked." A strategist says, "This move was meant to provoke. Let's analyze." They want me off balance. That reveals their weakness. This isn't chaos, it's exposure. I'll use it. Now, instead of responding, you're reading, you're observing, you're positioning. You no longer fight every battle. You choose which ones to let unfold and which ones to let implode on their own. Why this is power? Because the one who chooses their response wins before the other side finishes their move. They insult you, you stare. Still, they ghost you. You don't flinch, you calculate. They test your frame, you don't defend. You document, you don't escalate. You observe the trap they just walked into. Part 3. The map of mental triggers. You've been ambushed for years, not by people, by your own triggers. One word, one tone, one pause, and suddenly your nervous system spirals. But that only happens when you don't know the terrain. When you haven't mapped the battlefield, you live inside. What is a mental trigger? A trigger is an invisible button that bypasses logic and hijacks behavior. It skips thought, it skips strategy, it throws you into reaction, not because of what's happening, but because of what's been stored. It's not about them. It's about the emotional landmine you forgot you buried. Why mapping your triggers is power. Most people try to manage emotion. They meditate, breathe, self-soothe. But that's not control. That's reacting slower. Power is when you don't walk into the minefield at all, because you know where it is. Step 1. Identify emotional access points. Ask yourself, what situations consistently throw me off? What words or behaviors make me overthink? When do I stop thinking and start reacting? Look for patterns in rejection, criticism, silence, authority, praise, loss of control. Each one is a gate into your inner world, and if you don't lock the gates, someone else will walk through. Step 2. Chart the pattern, not the people. It's never them. It's the pattern they activate. Draw the map. What's the trigger? What emotion does it create? What behavior follows? What's the belief behind it? Example: trigger, being ignored. Emotion, worthlessness. Behavior, over-explaining. Belief, if I'm not acknowledged, I don't matter. That's not awareness. That's intel. And once you collect enough intel, you can predict the battlefield before it begins. Step 3. Set up the emotional firewall. Once you know where the gates are, you decide which ones stay open and which ones get locked. Firewall equals pause, arrow, recode, arrow, replace. Pause. This is not about now. Recode. This is an old pattern trying to run. Replace. What response gives me the most power later, not comfort now? You are no longer the emotional target. You are the architect of access. Advanced strategy. Let them show you your map. The people who trigger you most are not your enemies. They are your field reconnaissance. Let them press the buttons. Let them try to provoke. But this time, watch what lights up inside you. Not to react, to document. Because every trigger they activate reveals a gap in your sovereignty. You cannot win an internal war if you don't know where the gates are. But once you've mapped them, you don't defend. You don't avoid. You simply shut the system down before they even approach. Part 4. Thought before feeling. Strategic pause technique. The difference between the reactive and the strategic is just one pause, not a delay out of hesitation, but a pause with intention, a buffer zone where power lives, a window between trigger and response where decisions are made. Most people feel, then act. They hear a tone, they snap, they feel judged, they justify, they sense distance, they chase. All instinct, no calculation. Why? Because the system is running on autopilot. And autopilot always lands in the same place, regret. Strategic pause equals cognitive override. The pause is not weakness, it's power shifting. In that pause, you go from emotional target to tactical commander. You stop asking, how do I feel? You start asking, what's the best move 3 steps from now? Because if your next move only feels good for 10 seconds, but costs you frame, clarity, or power later, it's not a move, it's sabotage. How to install the pause. First, internal audit. Before reacting, run the mental scan. Whose voice is this? What's the intended outcome of my reaction? Am I about to move or be moved? Even 3 seconds of clarity can save you 30 days of recovery. Second, tactical delay. When in doubt, delay. Don't respond to messages right away. Don't defend yourself immediately. Don't finish a thought that feels too raw. Hold it. Let silence build pressure on them, not you. Third, pre-selected response set. Design a playbook of responses that keep you in control. Silence, redirection, slow eye contact, pausing mid-sentence, then walking away. You don't need to think in the moment. You need to execute the moment. The pause is your psychological fortress. Inside that pause, you regain clarity. You protect your frame. You make decisions like a strategist, not a slave. And here's the best part. They don't even know what happened. They thought they triggered you, but you disappeared into stillness. And when you came back, you weren't reacting, you were repositioning. From feeling to framing. Once you master the pause, you stop answering questions. You start redirecting energy. You begin to frame the situation instead of living inside it. No longer, They made me feel this. Now, they exposed their intention. I chose not to respond. And when your mind can stop, scan, and strategize before reacting, you are no longer human in chaos. You are a general in silence. Part 5. Emotional detachment equals strategic superiority. Most people think detachment means coldness, distance, apathy. But that's surface level. True detachment isn't emotional death. It's emotional freedom. You still feel, but you're not ruled by what you feel. You don't suppress emotions. You suspend reaction long enough to assess, reframe, and reposition. Why emotional attachment weakens you. When you're attached to being liked, you can be manipulated. When you're attached to being heard, you can be baited. When you're attached to being right, you can be triggered. Attachment creates targets. Detachment removes them. It's not about caring less. It's about caring strategically. Strategic detachment looks like hearing criticism and staying calm, being insulted and asking, why are they projecting? Watching chaos unfold and thinking, this is not my frame to fix. You don't get pulled into energy you didn't authorize. You don't validate emotion just because it's loud. You don't play a game just because someone else is panicking. What they feel when you detach. They feel uncertainty, pressure, insecurity, the need to over-explain, over-apologize, over-perform. Why? Because they're used to your emotional reaction as feedback, and now that it's gone, they're left with themselves, and most people can't sit with that. Strategic superiority is built in stillness. When you are no longer emotionally penetrable, you don't defend, you don't overthink, you don't collapse, you analyze, you adapt, you execute. You're not reacting to what they say, you're observing what they reveal. And in that space of quiet dominance, you move like a system, not a slave. You don't just stop caring. You start choosing where your care becomes leverage. And that's when emotional detachment becomes strategic superiority, final CTA. You no longer react. You no longer spiral. You no longer play emotional ping-pong with anyone, because now you see the loop, you see the triggers, and you step outside of all of it. You don't rush to respond. You don't try to be understood. You don't need to feel right. You observe. You calculate. You act with precision. You are not emotionless. You are emotionally untouchable. Your battlefield is no longer outside. It's internal. And on that battlefield, you are no longer a soldier. You are the commander. And when people try to trigger you, test you, bait you, they find nothing to grip, no code to access, no weakness to exploit, because you didn't suppress your emotions. You took control of the entire system. This is the birth of the inner strategist. Next video, number 94, Social Blackout, Why Visibility Destroys Influence. Now that you've gained internal sovereignty, it's time to learn the next power move, disappear from the spotlight and build influence in the dark.